I was hoping to get all this on air. There we are. We are live. This is the Eric Tries to Work podcast episode. I do this bit every time, and I don't know what episode it is, but I really don't know. I've been off the air for 4 months. Welcome back. I'm here with Rick, Playboy Homuth.
Oh, man. That's a good one.
Thank you. I've been. We're going to talk about your play, and I've been
true.
I'm a big Puff Daddy fan. Well, sorry, I'm a big Sean Combs fan.
That's right. He's an actor now.
Yes, I'm also a big Dwayne Johnson fan, but that's neither here nor there.
Who's not?
My daughter loves Moana, and that's all that we need to know. I am operating out of the new podcast studios. Looks like an abandoned whatever.
Yeah, I was going to ask
building.
That your last setting, it looked like such a homey, quaint backdrop full of warmth and love. And
well, it felt homey because I was living in Baltimore, but now I'm in Pennsylvania, in the centralness of Pennsylvania, which means I have 1,000 times the space and double the rooms for half the cost. So anyone who, as much as the show Girls gets trashed, there's a line in that first season where the main character goes back to her hometown in like Ohio or wherever, and she's on her phone with her New York friends, like, why don't we move to shithole Ohio, be where everything's cheap? And now I'm in central Pennsylvania, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. We should gentrify and move out all of the old rich
kick the Amish people out. Yeah.
Whoa, that is actually. You know, I was about to disagree and tell you what region they're actually from, but I don't know a goddamn thing. So you're right. Sure.
It's that state. I don't know. Pennsylvania is weird because it's a lot bigger than people expect because a lot of the East Coast states are tiny and stupid, but Pennsylvania is big and stupid. I mean, I'm coming to you live from Leawood, Kansas, so, I'm not trying to act like we have some superior dignity in the Midwest because we don't, but I remember driving through the East Coast, and you take a sip of your beer, and then you pee in the bottle, and then you look up, and you're in another state, and you're like, "That was West Virginia? Like that was it?" I don't know. It's crazy.
I'm glad you chose West Virginia because that sounds like a West Virginia state thing.
Yeah, it's fun. And then you just toss the bottle of piss out the window, and you keep driving, creating jobs.
Yeah, take that, Maryland.
Yeah, eat it,
dude. So I vowed to myself, when I would start this podcast back up, I'm going to be sober while I do it, maybe a little caffeine, but that's about it. Sober, I'm going to do it at waking hours. I'm going to do it whatever, to be serious. I don't know, do you ever watch The Wire?
Ah, man, I've had this conversation 3 times this week about people asking me if I've watched The Wire. And I've read the Wikipedia page, so I feel like, I don't know, I almost feel justified in saying yeah. But
You're good. It's fine. Yeah. Well, there's I'm in the middle of season 2, and it's very quick, I promise. The main character, Officer McNulty, he has a thing where he cleans up his act, and he's stops doing all the things, the sleeping around, the drinking, the legal activities, all this stuff. And he tries to get his wife back, and she's a no-go. And then the next episode opens with this cold open that's beautiful. He gets hammered at a bar. He drives home. He's a cop. Drives home drunk, crashes his car, sleeps with a random person, whatever. He wakes up and kind of goes ah, shit. That's me with this podcast. I got home from my open mic and did what I normally do when I have a good set, which is take some drinks.
Rip some Fireball, yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Fireball. Oh, my God. And then, had some energy drink. And then I was like, I got to have Rick on the podcast. Actually, you know what happened? No, I fucked up my own story. Then the Cubs lost, and I got hammered.
That's right. It was pretty bad, right?
Well, it was. And
it was like a 7-hour game, too, because of the rain delay.
Yes.
People ask why baseball is dying. I am on baseball's side, but holy shit, you can't have 6-hour games.
Oh, no, absolutely. Although I did watch earlier this year, I watched because you're a White Sox fan. If anyone saw you on the podcast last, I'm a Cubs fan. You're a White Sox fan, and I fucked that up the first time and and I was so bummed because I was supposed to have you on last week when they were playing the White Sox, and I was so excited for that shit. Anyway,
that was some shit talking.
Yeah,
primo spot for that. Yeah.
But anyway, so your play that you talked about the first time you were on the podcast came to fruition. Please tell me everything. Tell me about the play. Tell me how the play went. Tell me everything. I saw stuff on Facebook and I read a little. I skimmed the script, but I want to know from your perspective. Tell me.
Yeah, well, it's all right. Where do I start? I guess from the beginning. I think the play, like when I was on the podcast the last time, which phenomenal time, can't be more tickled to be here again.
Stop it. Stop. Keep going.
I know we had the brushing of elbows with the baseball thing, but we moved past it then and we'll move past it now. But I think the play was just me partially coming up with things to say, because I was like, shit, people go on this podcast and are comedians and perform and do things and blog. And I had a Hard Times t-shirt and a couple articles. So, that was good. But I wanted to...
You had an amazing article. Anyway, go on.
Oh, you stop. Oh, you always do this. You flatter me. But, and so it became this thing where I would talk about doing it. And then eventually you can't just keep talking about doing it. You have to actually start doing it. But the beauty of writing is it is in so many ways a performative act. So if I had all my papers around and like my notebooks and character charts and this and that, and let's say, a cute girl happened to pass by, like, oh, those old things, I'm writing a play. It's nothing special. It's just a thing that I'm doing. And so I did that for a while. And then probably a year after a year of talking about it. So this was 2 years. And then I went on your podcast when it was documented, set in stone, where people could go back and say, oh, this asshole said he was going to write a play, and you never do it. And so it became one episode in the series that is my life of accountability, just things about having to force myself to do something by making my subconscious realize how dumb I'll look if I don't do it. And it's a tried and true strategy. Yeah. And that's kind of how the play came about. It was, I lived, when I started this play, in a neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, about 10-minute walk from the Sox Park, 15 if you're drunk. And I started writing it then because I was just so fascinated by the neighborhood. And it was, I'm trying to gather all my inspiration thoughts here. That's so deep.
Yeah. Well, you can always tag me at any point, because right now I'm going through all your Hard Times articles and I'm finding how many classic ones you had. It's absurd how good your articles are. Anyway, go on if you're ready at this point.
Yeah, well, right, okay. So, well, I can address the classics at some point, because I don't know about that. But back to the show.
You have 3 that are 100% classics. And I didn't know this about you until, because I check out all the regular posters thing, because I get in this weird, I want to support everybody because I love how comedic genius so many Hard Times people are. But I like to look to see who has more articles than me and see where I fell in with that. And I didn't know this about you. You have, and it well beyond, you have you're a classic 2-pager, just like me.
Really?
And maybe 3 or 4 other people, or 5 or 6 maybe. Yeah, I looked in. When you look in your name on Hard Times, they have to give you a 2nd page.
Oh.
I think Kyle Earth is the only 3rd pager I've ever met. I
Really?
think everybody else is at 2.
Dan's not? I feel like Dan's got a million hard stuff.
Which Dan? There are 3 that have been crushing it. You mean
Liberto? Shit, that's right. There are, fuck. I always think of Dan Liberto because he and I are just so rock solid together. But
he had like a 6 to 9 month. Oh yeah, you assholes had that awesome Photoshopped picture of you guys hard styling it on the writers group page, and I got so jealous. I want to be in a picture of those so bad. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but he's a 2-pager too. We're all 2-pagers.
This is a fantastic tangent because, and that's another reason why I like coming on here, is just so we can fawn over each other in our accomplishments, because there is. There's this core group of writers. Like, there's fucking, I don't know, 200 people in the group right now. I have no idea. Hardly any of it.
Like 75.
Yeah. But there's this core group of people that are just really fucking funny and solid, and I consider friends of mine. And it is. It's so really cool awesome to hear about everybody.
It's so fucking awesome.
And I'm looking at the floor. All right, I got the shirt right now.
Which shirt?
If you want to measure classics, this is how you do it on the...
Dude, don't show me that shirt. Do you understand? There are 100 headlines on that shirt, and none of them are mine.
No shit. Really?
None of them are mine.
Ah, man.
I am officially in the 50s in articles, and none of them are mine. I am borderline about to contact whoever made the shirt and tell them I will pay them hundreds of dollars to make one shirt that's just all mine.
Yeah, I mean, because it'd be interesting to see it. This shirt isn't that old though, so maybe not. But I know that, like, what was the one you had that was huge? The Warped Tour.
Oh, the Warped Tour. Yeah, that's, dude. I haven't talked about this publicly.
Oh, good.
I went to Warped Tour in Maryland. We're on Women, great band, great people. Their bassist Sue is a friend of mine. He gave me like backstage passes. Cool. And I went to go see Gwar, and I'm just realizing that tidbit is just me bragging. That has nothing to do with the story. I fucked up. Shouldn't have said that. But somebody from Gwar went, I think the singer, maybe one of the guitarists, was like, made a joke about like, oh, we should push our stage 100 feet back because of my record. And I laughed, and a friend of mine was like, dude, I think they're talking about your article. I was like, they're not talking about my article. And then he goes, then the singer goes, I don't know if you read the internet, but that's actually about me. And I was like, holy shit, they mentioned my article.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was the greatest.
That's one of those things where, like, you can't just shout at the guy. Be like, that was me, you wrote it. And, like,
and on the drive home, I thought, what if I did? Do you think they'd bring me up? I could prove it. I got an ID and a phone. And maybe, just maybe, then they'd let me cut Trump's head off during their set. And then I thought, what a great Facebook profile picture. And I blew it.
Fantastic. Well, shit. Next year, I guess.
Anyway,
if there is a next year.
Next year.
You know, sometimes I'm not so sure. Watching that guy, was it Kevin Lyman or whoever that guy is with the fedora and the old guy and who always says the dumbest shit about whatever. I feel like if anybody could run into the ground something of that size,
dude,
it'd be that guy.
Please don't talk bad about Kevin Lyman. We all respect and love Kevin Lyman here. The fact that no subpoenas showed up at my house after that shit is
that's true.
There are people who tweeted at him, I am refunding my ticket because not because of the sexual predator thing, that was also fake, well, more real than the stages thing, but because they were afraid that the stages were actually going to be pushed back. Like, I screen capped his tweet saying, I totally get the joke, it's funny, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, if this guy ever takes us to court and I get thrown under the bus for that shit, for like loss of ticket sales, I have proof that you, sir, got the joke.
You said you got the joke. Yeah, you got it, because he has to appear with it while, like, fending off all these angry, stupid people. That poor bastard.
I looked at his replies on Twitter that day, and it was just him going over and over like, it's not real, asshole. It's not real. It's not real. Anyway, tell me about your play.
Yeah, back to the play. And I figured, because before I signed on to the Hangout thing, I was thinking, man, we can have enough stuff to talk about. Like, the play's over. But now I'm realizing that, like, part of the motivation for doing this is I have no people to talk about the hard times with. Like, all the people I know in real life don't give a shit anymore. Because they were like, the first few times I had articles on, they were like, oh shit, dude, that's really cool. And now whenever I mention it, they're like, yeah, whatever, dude, like, shut the fuck up. We don't care.
So the open micers are sick of my shit.
Yeah. But okay, so it was called Neighborhood Goons, and it premiered at this festival in Kansas City, which is my hometown. I live in Chicago, but a guy, one of my best friends from high school, his name was Charlie Whitecamp, and I actually did another podcast with him. There's this guy, I'm sorry, this is another fucking tangent, but we're just going to have to get used to the reality of that. That's what's going to happen. But his name's Aaron Rhodes. He actually just got into the Hard Times group like a couple weeks ago, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, he hasn't had an article yet, but he's a super solid, like, young gun too. Like, I think he's like 22 or something.
Fucking these Dan Liberto and young people.
I know, right? Like, well, because Dan and I used to be some of the youngest ones, but now there's like fucking teenagers and shit. It's wild. But anyway, so this guy, he has this website, shuttlecockmusic.com. It's Kansas City based. I know I saw you chuckle at Shuttlecock there, but as a tangent of a tangent of a tangent of a tangent, the Nelson Atkins Museum of Fine Art in Kansas City has a bunch of shuttlecock, like badminton birdie statues on the lawn. That's where he got the name. But anyway, so he has a music blog, and he had me on with Charlie to talk about the show, and then we talked a lot about hard time stuff too. So that was a really cool podcast. Obviously, his will always be number 2 in my heart because he doesn't try nearly as he tries an adequate amount of hard. He doesn't try too hard. You know? He does. Nobody does. Nobody tries as hard. But anyway, so this guy Charlie, who put it on, is kind of like produced the thing. And so basically, like, my involvement of it to an extent was I wrote it and then handed the script off and then just kind of, you know, sat back and cracked open a beer, which was the nice part about being a writer, I guess, is it's really not strenuous work because he's down there building the set and getting the actors together. And I just show up like a week before, just like taking off my sunglasses, like, yes, I'm here from Chicago. Let's get to work.
You need a lot of sunglasses in freezing cold Chicago.
Oh, sure. Well, snow's white. It's very reflective. I don't know what happens.
That's a good response to my bullshit. Go on.
Yeah, no, hey, it gets bright out. Goddamn bright out.
It's goddamn bright out here. It's like there's no room to drink. Sorry, go on.
Exactly. That's the ticket there. And so, yeah, all right, Chicago. We're back to where we kind of started. Bridgeport, near South Side, where the White Sox play, formerly Comiskey, and then it turned into U.S. Cellular, which was a dumb name, and now it's Guaranteed Rate Field, which is somehow an even dumber name.
That's the most
I don't get it.
Shit I've ever heard.
It's so stupid. But I think that sort of well, all right, we can talk about baseball later. Let's get meat and potatoes here. So, Bridgeport, Chicago, and this is the part of the description where Charlie kind of kicks me under the table when I start talking about this because it's kind of a touchy subject. Is one of the last remaining like white enclaves in Chicago, where, you know, whenever you hear the South Side of Chicago, you think about, you know, Chief Keef and Chirac and shit that just gets on the news.
Yep.
And to an extent, that's true because Chicago, in its earliest days during the Great Migration of Black people from the South, was so incredibly segregated on like a municipal level where it was sanctioned by the city, you know, and all these housing developments were done in such a way that Black people were restricted to certain parts of that. So that's how that came about. But before the Great Migration, obviously they were just not regular people, but white people.
AOS crackers.
Yeah, exactly. And I say regular people because that's how they looked at themselves.
Yeah,
you know? And so Bridgeport was somehow able to stay mostly white.
That's interesting.
It's interesting because the way they did that was just being fucking racist as all hell. Like, it's really just disgusting, the things you can go and read on the internet. And like, this is the place where mayors come from.
Oh my, well, I'm not surprised, but yes, yeah, go on.
Definitely. But like Richard J. Daley, who was kind of the infamous like boss, corrupt ass mayor, built, you know, was there for the Sears Tower and shit like that. Like,
was that during like Mafia Runs Everything?
Not exactly Mafia Runs Everything, but in that esteemed tradition of corruption. Like,
gotcha.
This is like the 60s, I guess. Okay. And so he was from Bridgeport and obviously had a stake in the game because he, being a white Irishman from the South Side, was fucking racist as all hell too. And literally you could go on Google Maps, or really any map. There's more maps than just Google Maps these days. But and look at the Dan Ryan Expressway, which curves from downtown, like way out of the natural direction of its path to separate Bridgeport from Bronzeville, which its name starts because it's a Black people neighborhood. So there's the white people on one side, Black people on the other side, and it's just cut right down the middle by this 12-lane expressway.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm just so fascinated by this, like in a perverse way, because like I remember I was seeing a girl from the South Side for a while, and she said that like when she was in middle school.
Was her name West Side Story?
Yeah.
That's what that sounds like. Okay.
As though Maria's character's name in West Side Story is
Maria West Side Story.
Yeah. But no, it was, I guess, a Sharks and the Jets sort of thing without the dancing and more. Like, you would just say that she knew boys in her class that would just go throw rocks at Black people. and it blew my fucking mind.
Jesus Christ!
I come from Leawood, Kansas, which is lily white as all hell, suburban neighborhood in Kansas City, Missouri, and just you don't confront shit on that level, and I guess I'm not really okay. I'm not going to call this off topic because this is off topic, but it's not off topic, but it all sort of comes together in this. All right, I'm laying out to you a substantial intellectual basis for what amounted to a stupid dick and fart joke play.
Awesome. That's the greatest thing. Perfect. Go on.
And because Neighborhood Goons is, I think I summed it up quite nicely talking to somebody else the other day, where it's a traditional comedy of errors, a very Neil Simon-esque farce, but people say fuck a lot and smoke cigarettes and hit each other and are just alcoholics.
Nice.
And that's where it's set, because it's this traditional Irish working class neighborhood. But my goal was to, in some ways, turn that upside down and like take it to task in a certain extent. And I realized that that's kind of a nebulous goal for a first-time playwright in a regional theater festival, but that's kind of was the basis for the show. Yeah. And what it became was more just sort of a playful romp and a begrudging love letter to a neighborhood where I spent some of my formative years, formative year, I guess.
That's awesome. I've written a handful of like movie scripts or
really cool
play type scripts where I'm way better at writing like TV scripts. I have a number of pilots I'm working on, but like the way that you describe that is very reminiscent of, but you actually went through with it and you're fully good. Mine was garbage. But I had a whole thing about growing up in the Baltimore punk scene that reminds me very much of that when you describe. It's like an homage, but from an outsider perspective, but you lived it from a neighborhood that you were a part of that means a lot to you, but you still see its hypocrisies and its problems. And like, that's such a beautiful thing to me that you were able to put that out on a stage and recreate that to a point that but you didn't just do it for you.
Right.
You did it, like you said, in a way that became a nonsensical fart joke farce that people enjoyed. That was still built on this thing that meant a lot to you. And that's so impressive to me that you were able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, because it didn't end up doing a lot about race, just because that wasn't the venue. And in a lot of ways, grappling with that sort of thing is, you can talk about a person's role or this or that, and it sort of, that took a backseat to what the play initially became. But what was funny was, two of the leads ended up being played by black actors, which was really cool. Because and I discussed this with a number of people because I was a little nervous about that at first because I was thinking like I don't feel comfortable. Like, am I writing for black? Is that my job? Like, I don't want to step on any toes or anything like that.
Well, it seems to me like you wrote human beings.
Yeah,
and cast the best people for them. Yeah,
which was. And that's nice to hear because, I mean, I don't know, especially like if you're writing characters and like there were two women in the show and people told me they liked the way the women turned out, which is nice to hear because as just a white dude, like, it's tough sometimes. And by that I mean it's tough to be a white man because reverse racism is a problem in America.
Totally.
We're all Trump fans here.
That's how we're going to take that. That's how we're going to interpret what you just said. Yeah, totally.
And period. Yeah.
Because we're bullies and we look for any kind of weakness to attack. That's what we do.
And then can we talk about men's rights? What's the deal with men's rights?
By the way, I would love to see Red Pill Seinfeld. That's the greatest character I can think of. What's the deal?
I was in divorce court the other day. You wouldn't believe alimony. Who's Al? Where's his money?
Where's his money?
Not my money.
Holy shit, Red Pill Seinfeld. We need to contact Nick Mullen right away. Yeah. I bet that guy would do the greatest Red Pill Seinfeld you've ever heard.
That would be good. Shit, where the fuck was I?
Well, I was going to say, again, with the women thing, you wrote, that's the whether women writing, I've seen shows, and I mean, I don't catch a lot of plays, so I'm just talking about what I've seen on TV. I've seen women written great by men, written poorly by women, and of course the inverse.
Right.
But what it all ends up coming down to seems to be you just write a person with realistic motivations, and no matter what demographics they fall into in casting, or even if that's how you wrote them, but you still just wrote people.
Yeah.
Then it ends up working out just fine, because there's all these like I guess I haven't watched any of his recent movies, but I hear the criticism of like Paul Feig of like writing women's characters in very shallow ways.
But I know, honestly, I don't know who that is. What did he do?
Oh, he's the guy who made Freaks and Geeks with Judd Apatow, but recently he did like recently he's been writing a lot of the Melissa McCarthy movies. He wrote the Ghostbusters movie. But I've heard things of like, oh, he's just writing women like in stereotypes. But he's this progressive guy who's doing everything he can to like write realistic women. But that may be the issue, trying to write realistic women. You write people and then you cast people in them. That's what it is. If you're trying to write a thing that's in your mind as an entity, you're not going to write something realistic. You're going to write something stereotypical or based on whatever. Maybe it's even like art imitating life, imitating art kind of thing. I don't know. But it sounds to me, and granted, I didn't read your whole script. I just skimmed it. But from what I was reading,
neither did I.
Nothing. I mean, it was long. You guys, but like at the same time, it just felt very much like, oh, this is a person talking. These are two people having an interaction, and regardless of the demographic, it's just a beautiful thing. And that's why I'm not surprised people told you, wow, how you wrote these women really well. And it's like, yeah, I wrote people with goals and motivations that make sense, and that's what I wrote. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Did you ever see As Good as It Gets with Helen Hunt and Jack Nicholson?
Oh yeah, he bangs somebody young, and that's the point of the movie.
Does he?
Anyway, yeah, no, he like sleeps the.
No, wait, shit. I'm not thinking. No, what is it? That's Whatever Works, I think.
How the shit did this just happen? Okay, 3 minutes ago I referenced Nick Mullen, who on his podcast a few weeks ago had an exact conversation where they mixed up those two movies.
Well, because it's like a kind of weird old dude, and then
no, but he just, I'm telling you, but we weren't even on that topic. I'm saying I referenced a guy who had that fame, and a few minutes later we changed the topic, and it's the thing they just talked about. That's insane.
Wow. Anyway, yeah. I mean, but anyway, yeah, right. There's a well, I think, and one As Good as It Gets is James L. Brooks from The Simpsons, I think, directed it. Whereas Whatever Works is fucking shit dick Woody Allen. So there you go.
Shit dick Woody Allen. Classic shit dick.
But anyway, Jack Nicholson's character in As Good as It Gets is a curmudgeon-y writer in New York City who gets entangled with good old sensible Helen Hunt, who's a beleaguered single mother waitress. And Greg Kinnear plays a gay artist, and it's just a riot. But he says, Jack Nicholson's character says, when some woman approaches him and says, "Oh, I love your writing. How do you write women characters so well?" And he says, "I write a man and then take away like common sense and intelligence." And yeah, it's one of those things like, man, I don't want to be on your side anymore. You're a dick. But I think George R.R. Martin, and this can plant the seed for a Game of Thrones conversation we can have, because you mentioned that earlier on. And I have some hot takes there as well. But he said something like, somebody asked him how he writes women so well. And he said, because I don't remember what it amounts to. He just said, because I just write people. Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. And I would never deign to compare myself to either of those two writers, George R. R. Martin or the fictional character in this movie. But I try to follow in that example.
Dude, I have not one, not two, not three, but four George R. R. Martin dead headlines for Hard Times for when he dies.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Shit. And if he dies before finishing those books, you better believe I have the headline that's getting chosen, because I've been working on it for like a year and a half.
That's probably...
Yeah.
I was going to say, not longer than he's been working on Winds of Winter, but I'm sure distilled in value. I almost want to say that I hope he dies in his sleep very soon, so I can hear that joke.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen is I'm going to post it, and you're going to like it because you feel obligated, and maybe 2 other people are, and no one else is, and it's going to die, just like George R. R. Martin. And this whole podcast will be Oh, dude, I have so coming up in September. I have the date, but I don't remember what it is. I don't feel like looking it up.
Sure.
But this is just for you or any Hard Times people listening who might get a kick out of this. I have a couple Baltimore shows where some Hard Times writers are coming in from New York.
Oh, cool.
There's one night. It's a
Who's
Sunday. So the Sunday night show is a Sunday and a Monday night show. The Sunday night show is in the middle of the suburbs. That's kind of like, it's a cool bar, but it's not a great comedy bar. We booked the show. I hope it does well. I really hope it does well, but I don't have high hopes in the sense that, like, in the past it hasn't been the best place for comedy shows, but it's a venue. These guys are in town. They don't have anything else that night. I'd love to set something up. The lineup now, it's me. I'll host it. Kevin Titt, who's in our writer's room. He hosts the punk comedy shows every month in DC. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if he's had anything posted. But either way, Jeremy Hammond, Sam Rose, Dan Liberto, and
shit.
It's like 5 Hard Times writers who combined have some like
a decent chunk,
like 150 articles.
That's a lot.
And there's going to be like 8 people there watching, and it's going to be it's going to be. I'm going to have to find somebody to live stream it because I guarantee you the internet audience would be so much bigger than the actual. Just because of where it is.
I mean, I'd watch it. Put it on Facebook. Yeah, I'll drop it.
I think I will. But it's like, but one of the things I want to do towards the end, because it's not a Hard Times show. It's just a show I'm putting on, but there's a lot of Hard Times people on it. What I would love for us to do, and I think I'm going to try to arrange this, is have at the end everyone comes on stage and they have to read their favorite article of theirs that they think is great, headline, that did not get accepted. Something people liked but didn't get accepted. Then they also have to read one of the shittiest headline of theirs that they can find, the most embarrassingly bad pitch that they made. And I think that'd be really fun.
Or you can dedicate the whole show to the Punk X doesn't give a shit about why.
Dude, that is the greatest template ever. I love that so much.
It's everywhere.
That's how much I love that so much. I won't even try to make one.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where I'm like, I got to step back. I can't even
it's gotten so metaphysical and just it's crossed this threshold into a further dimension of comedy that I don't think any of us truly understand. So I think it's really out of our hands.
Yeah. All right, now we're gonna get real into meta Hard Time shit.
Good. Fuck yeah.
Were you involved in the Facebook group that happened recently? The Sounds Like a Hard Times article.
That's right. What a time that was.
Those were the greatest 48 hours.
Yeah, I was pretty busy with play stuff then, so I didn't really get as involved as I maybe would have. But I know that
I think the premise is for anybody still listening to this. No, the premise is, dude, if I was insecure about my podcast before, now having been off for 4 months, this could either be the podcast no one listens to because they don't realize it exists anymore, or this could be the biggest podcast I ever have. So
we'll see.
But so basically the premise of this is that someone in the Hard Times discovered a Facebook group that I think was just, or Matt thinks was just, I think it was Matt, said it was just made to it was called Sounds Like a Hard Times article, but okay. And it seemed like it was just made so people could tag it in posts to make fun of people who said something that made it sound like they were the subject of a Hard Times article.
Which is a big thing on Facebook, because there's a long storied tradition of sounds like X but okay, sounds fake but okay, or sounds classist but okay.
Oh really?
Sounds
I didn't even know that.
But okay, yeah. So it's not the first one, but it's definitely very niche.
Okay, I got you. And there were a couple hundred people in the group. And then somebody in Hard Times discovered it. And this is something this broke all the cardinal Hard Times rules where we never get involved in the comments on our own articles.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, someone will share my article, or like an article of mine, and I will post like, "Thank you for sharing it." But like, but what I'm talking about is we refuse to go like in the comments of those articles on the Hard Times page.
Yeah.
If someone says, "Look good," yeah, the author of the article isn't going to post like, "Hey, you shut up about my article." Like that's no. That we don't play with shit. Like we just keep it alone.
Oh, I got something for you when you're done with this. But remind me because I got a bit on that.
But it was like, I guess because this was a closed group, and it was clearly a bunch of like, anyone in this group had to be a diehard Hard Times fan. Because it looked like the group kind of turned into people pitching their own Hard Times articles. So anyway, somebody in our writer's room found it, and then like 50 of us joined, and we shit posted our way through that shit post group and just ruined it. They're at a point now where it's that requires they require admin approval for all posts now, because the actual writers of the site they were aping came in and shit post.
I was not aware of that. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was like, if you go in there, it's like we all posted all the things we want to post in the Hard Times writers group, but because we know it's a place to post real jokes, like we just posted all our shit post stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And then there were a couple hundred people who were like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then us having a field day. It was just like, it was one of those moments where it was like we all got to act like middle schoolers again. Like we all
unleashed the tension. Yeah,
it was a beautiful 48 hours before half of us got kicked out.
People get kicked out, really?
The group was made to emulate a site we write for. And then the writers of the site they were fans of came in, and they got mad and kicked us out. How punk is that shit? That's like you blocking the sticker of your favorite band on Twitter. Like, fuck that guy. I love their music, but get the fuck out of my Facebook. Yeah.
I'm just scrolling through the page right now, and it's funny. Like, because I think it was really at its inception was like probably 20 people, just like hardcore internet Facebook kids.
Yeah.
And then everyone we all went parading in like we just liberated Paris or something. Like we are fucking heroes.
And if there's anything, if there's anything to take away from it, it really is that like none of us, even when it's kind of weird looking at the Hard Times now, because when we joined, the first time we had the podcast, you had maybe had what? I mean, I looked up, you had like 5 articles on. And by the way, what was it? When I had you on, we talked about, you had just had the ICP Fago Detroit Flint water thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that blew up. That's big. I think that's bigger than any article I've ever had after it's been reposted. Well, it's been reposted. Wait till that Warped Tour thing gets reposted every single year.
It fucking should. It's fucking hilarious.
But you also have the punk band booked at Sober Space makes another trip to the van. That one's like done really well.
That's
and then
an OG heavy hitter.
That is. But like that's the thing. When I first had you on, you had maybe 6 articles on. Once I had you on the podcast the first time, maybe more, unless I'm fucking up. But I thought that maybe more.
That sounds about right.
6 to 12, somewhere between there. And I had only had, was it 2016? Jesus Christ, I might have had 2 on at that point.
Really?
Yeah, January. When I joined in November 2015, I pitched for maybe it was October. I pitched for something like 6 months before I got anything on. I had 1 thing on in my first 6 months. And then, so when I had you on, if it was January or February, you'd have had like 8 or 9 on. And I had still only had 1 or 2. It wasn't until April or May of that year when something clicked in my brain. Yeah. And it just was fucking lights out from there. But like, I think it was because I started stand up and I was starting to write in punchlines. But anyway, but like, you have these like whatever. Anyway, what the fuck were we talking about?
No, lay it on me. Like, if I'm funny, the people ought to know.
Well, the Facebook group thing, it was like, that's what it was. When we started on at the site, if I'm looking correctly, you got on maybe 2 or 3 months before I did. And when did you get on? Was it September 2015 or before that?
I don't know. I thought you were on before me, so I'm not sure. Really?
Well, I submitted before you probably, but it took multiple submissions.
Like got on. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll look it up because I'm interested to know myself.
Okay.
I think the first one was the break room thing.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I like that one, dude. It's another one of those things where like now I'm just jerking off, but like it was like you were one of the first people from Hard Times I had on, and the people I have had on from Hard Times, I haven't had people on recently, which is a shame. I should start doing that again. But was people who had articles that made me laugh really hard, and like I feel like a really good hipster for Hard Times because I had you on when you had like barely anything on the site so far. I had Kyle Erf on when he was brand fucking new.
Yeah,
and I was
you
like, this guy is well, Matt Sankum discovered Kyle Erf. My ass. Jesus Christ, the man is a satire god. Like some combination of Bill, Matt, and Ed discovered Kyle. And I just feel proud that like I was able to go, oh shit, that guy is really good. Like really good. But same with you, same with a bunch of other people. And it's so cool to like see all these people who I like globbed onto. I was like, you guys are so funny, even though you only had a few articles on. And then now we're a year and a half later, more than that. And all of you are like the site's heavy hitters. And it's so cool to just see that like, and have you back on and just, now I'm just getting all nostalgic, but having you back on just like,
nice.
So that kind of goes into what I was, the original point before my tangent was that like when we all started, the site was big for anything we'd have done. But the site now, I can't believe I couldn't believe it was as big as it was when I joined. But how it is now is just absurd, and the fact that everyone in the writers' room seems to be evolving, the site seems to be evolving, and it's just getting better and better. Yeah. And the idea that it hasn't even peaked yet, and it's this popular, is just mind blowing. Yeah. Back to what we were just talking about, where it's like there are people who recognize it as a thing, like
yeah, the Facebook like that. It's almost its own like hallmark in progression and its place in this weird sort of internet culture zeitgeist that exists, which is so very prevalent because I think, there's a lot of, obviously we compare ourselves to The Onion a lot because they were first. And I think, honestly, in terms of quality, we are absolutely competitive, but The Onion is a website that's absolutely penetrated into the vaginal mind of people's comedy. But I think the Hard Times is very much on its way, and that's why it's so cool watching I think the leadership in particular, like Matt has all these crazy visions for the site that I would never dreamed of, and it's just ambitious in such a great way. And so it's such an amazing time to be part of it. So,
and the quality of gatekeeping that they have, the amount of like pitches that I've had that have done well, and then the ones they choose from it. Even like I'll sit there and be like, well, I mean, I've learned to accept it very early on, but it's like, you'll look at it and you'll be like, I don't know why this one got picked, but this one didn't get picked. And then you publish it, and then you're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's why that got picked. I totally get it now. It's just that it's so many things have to come together, but that's why it's so crazy where like none of us fuck around like, oh, we're this whatever. But then there's a site like of hardcore fans dedicated to it. And that's where we chose to, and it's like we all walked in, and it's not like we acted like celebrities, but we probably could have. And that's a douchey thing to say, but I'm just trying to be extremely honest. I've never been on the winning side of things, so it's hard. It's like normally me being extremely honest is me going like, I'm not funny, I'm a piece of shit, and I'm an asshole, and everything I do sucks. But this is the first time I'm on like the winning team, and so it's like to be like, good. Yeah, it feels good, but at the same time, it's weird to talk about it honestly because honesty makes you sound like a douchebag. I have tried to write jokes about like, I've done pretty well on Reddit with comedy, and like,
I see you on Reddit.
Just looking at, I see you on Reddit, but it's
hey, don't think I don't see you. I see it.
I probably have more Reddit views on 6 posts than I do on 50 Hard Times articles, just because of the nature of the beast of how like Reddit works and how many people see that shit. Hard Times, I get messages and Twitter stuff from people but like Reddit, people recognize me in public. Like that's crazy.
Really?
That shit is weird as shit. It's few and far between. But when I go to an open mic and there's comedians there,
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter. Then you totally do. But I've been recognized by a guy at a deli, a guy at a gas station, like passersby in a mall. Like it happens, but it's like it's weird as shit and it's cool. But at the same time, I try to write jokes about it where it's like, yeah, there's all these like good things that come with it, but none of that is money. And so like I've tried to write jokes, but it never works on stage because I'm walking around. What it comes down to is a humble brag. It's going, look how awesome all my shit is. Oh, it's too bad I'm not also rich. And then you're like, oh, I'm a fucking asshole. And so it's weird to be on the winning team and try to be honest. It's like Dane Cook never put this on any specials, but apparently, I forget what comedian said this, but saw him do a show in Vegas. It was a late show, and he was a small show, and he was kind of like, he was doing okay because he's Dane Cook and he's famous, but he was bombing a little bit. And it was like there was a moment where he just 5-6 years ago, I think.
Oh, okay.
And he got like pissed at the crowd, and he goes, and he said, "See those two hot chicks over there?" He goes, "I could fuck them if I wanted to," and that is, it's a fucked up thing to say. I'm probably paraphrasing. Maybe it was smoother than that, but it was like. But here's the thing, though. On one hand, it's disrespectful, it's disgusting, it's a lowbrow joke. But on the other, if you're looking at a pure honesty perspective, yeah, he probably could. So it's like, if you're on the winning team and you're honest, then you look like a piece of shit, unless you're Louis C.K., in which case, like, he's like the only guy who can like be honest about things and still kind of like float the line to be like, oh, okay, I'm winning, I'm honest, and whatever. But even with all that, we still walked into that site and could have acted like celebrities and really showed our true colors by just being punk rock assholes who fucking, oh, you like us? Let's make you hate us. Like, we can't help it. We can't fucking help it. We're punks. We can't.
It was a childish outburst, but you know what? We lived fast and died hard. And that's something to do.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my God. Anyway, so you made a play.
Right. So, no, I'm so glad we're doing this because, like I said, like I've talked about the play so much, and I really enjoy doing it, but I never get to talk about hard time stuff. So,
dude, I'm happy to talk about whatever you want. Okay, so you did the play. It went. I assume it went pretty well. I saw the pictures on Facebook. It looked great. Yeah,
as a matter of fact, it did. Like, obviously, it's a festival crowd, so you know you can only accomplish so much. But I think my main thing.
Wait, real quick. Sorry to pull back because I want to hear that. Can you explain to people listening what that means? It's a festival crowd, so you can only do so much. What does that mean?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Good. Because I think I'm in fun pal around conversation mode instead of podcast about a thing or trying to do with the professional air mode. So yes, thank you very much, and that's why you're in the control booth here because of direction like that. So there was the Fringe Festival, which is a giant thing that started in Edinburgh, Scotland, and out over there across the pond, or whatever the fuck the Scots say, probably something gross or about puke or heroin. But there's I think they bill it as like the largest arts festival in the world, and it may very well be, but it's a big deal. A lot of people, get started to do stuff there, and so they have a lot of those now all over the world, like in the United States, in Canada, apparently, because I know that Graham, who does theater stuff, and actually talked about, he actually read the play before it went on, and we talked about that.
Graham from the Hard Times.
Graham from the Hard Times, yeah, who also does a lot of Vice stuff and theater stuff, and so he did a Fringe thing in Toronto, and so there's shit like that all over the place, and it's kind of like, the name Fringe, it means you're sort of on the outlying spectrum, like the edge of whatever scene you may be engaging in artistic pursuits in my case, theater, but there's people who do music, there's people who fucking juggle or something. I don't know. It's whatever you can do. You have a platform to do it, and that was nice because theater, especially in a market like Kansas City, is mostly, I think, older people. Just because, it costs money and it's an older medium, obviously, because the fucking Greeks didn't have IMAX or whatever, so they need to do something. And so I was worried how my vulgar Neil Simon-esque Shit Fuck Fest would play.
Shit Fuck Fest.
And
I think I went to that. It was good.
As far as I can tell, it played very well. And I think a lot of that goes back to what we were sort of saying, where if you just write honest characters who say honest things, then it doesn't matter what necessarily they're saying, as long as that strikes a chord within the audience. And that's what I really sought to do with the show, was it does like just replicate, you know, how people I know talk, how I talk, how people I don't know but think I am involved, like just people like the subjects in the show, and try and put that on stage. Because so much of what I read and a lot of people also criticize about not only modern theater but a lot of media in general is that there's an authenticity that is just absent in so many ways. You know, dialogue is the most present, but just references, you know, whatever you want to call it. Like, I think that's is the most basic smell test for whether something is good or bad, is if it comes across as authentic.
Yeah.
And
sure.
So I think if I had to, you know, cite one reason for our success, it would be the authenticity of, you know, the acting and the stage design and the direction, and of course, I guess the words. But I think that was the chief goal, and so I'm really happy that we landed that punch specifically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that totally rings true. That's that actually. I'm now picking a small part just for like a little anecdotal thing that I relate to. Mm-hmm. But when you said making sure like certain references played, that I had to do a few weeks ago. I did my first hosting weekend at an actual like comedy club.
Yeah.
And doing so, like the rules of being a host, you know, no crowd work, just jokes. Your job is to get them used to hearing jokes. No dirty stuff, no like blatant sex stuff. And another thing that's kind of an unwritten rule, but just works well for those kind of audiences, where you have to, the demographics are all over the place, and you can't just expect one type of person. It's like no specific references to cultural things that aren't ubiquitous, or things like, you know, different age groups might not relate to, like cutting with the video game jokes. You don't need to analyze rap lyrics. Like, you can't do that because they don't like the easy jokes that don't like apply to everyone. And I spent, you know, a month, 6 weeks preparing for that thing at open mics and bar shows, and analyzing my bits. I'm like, okay, what jokes am I? Okay, let's cut out all the dirty jokes, the sex jokes, the specific references. I'm like, holy fuck, I don't have 30 minutes. I have 5. And figuring out how to like, and what it really teaches you is like, oh, okay, if I want to make jokes that are going to hit with 90% of audiences 90% of the time, which to me is the ratio you need to keep a joke if you want to do this for a long time, or if you want to keep it in your arsenal until you're ready to do an actual special or something, is like, oh, okay, it just has to be about the human experience or extremely ubiquitous pop culture references. And I just moved from Maryland to Pennsylvania, not that far. None of the references are the same. Anytime I want to reference anything, even if it's a universal thing, I mean, some of them are, but
people are like, hey, how about crab, guys? You like eating crab?
But that's the thing is, if I want to reference a specific thing, so here's a good example. I have a joke. The joke is about being in bands, and when you're in a band, people always say stupid shit like, you know, like, oh, what's your band called? Maybe I've heard of you. And then I do a bunch of tags about like, yeah, I'm in the fucking Coldplay. Like, why would you have heard of my shitty band, kind of thing? And I do a bunch of things on that where one of the bit is the person asking me that is a waitress, and one of the lines in it is something like, I'm sorry, did you think there was a Foo Fighter in your section? You know, casually dining at the Chili's in, and I would say Dundalk, which is Maryland's like shitty city that everyone laughs at. And then I came up here and I was like, oh, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. And I defined a new shitty city. And it's like that kind of thing where the joke still works. Like, I have a bunch of jokes like that where the thing works, where in Maryland, I'm going to reference Royal Farms. Up here, I might reference Wawa. Like, it's like, and you probably don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
I've been to Wawa before, but
okay. But it's like, at the end, like all these little regional differences where it's like, did you ever watch Archer? That cartoon?
Yeah, I've seen a few episodes.
There's a 3-part episode with greatest 2 voice actors ever, John Benjamin, who plays Archer, and Patrick Warburton, who plays another agent in this 3-episode arc. He's the guy who played Putty in Seinfeld.
Oh, I love that guy.
Yeah, that's right. Doubles! And he I fucking love Putty. Anyway, he plays another agent, and they're great. Like the voices, hearing those two in the same scene is such a cool thing. But they there's a thing where like Archer becomes a pirate king and nobody speaks English, and so they speak like a couple of words, but he keeps using all these like all these euphemisms and turns of phrases, and now I'm blanking on idioms. He uses lots and lots of idioms. And he keeps, like, no one knows what the fuck he's talking about because he's using idioms. Even if you understand a basic language, you're not going to get all their idioms. And that's what a lot of stand-up is, where you have to go, oh, this idiom does, like, you realize how much you rely on common references with the people around you. Yeah. And if you're writing something for a much larger audience, like The Hard Times does, you can't, I mean, we're lucky that we get to reference common punk things and common alt culture things. But outside of there, it's like, if you're trying to do to a huge audience, like with your play, you can't just reference the things you know, because you're aiming for a much larger audience. And I think that's really cool when you described it compared to writing characters, where you can't just write a character who's like a person from this area. You have to write a human being who is relatable, despite all of their demographic information, is relatable to all other people. And that's how you write a character. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's substance is, I think, the key word, because that is what's most identifiable. And then almost like had to be explained to me, you know, in the process when I was like, you know, just workshopping it with other people, and just not even that much of a process, but getting feedback. It's people being like, okay, first of all, I'm not from Chicago. I don't know what the fuck this is. And I get this Dillinger 4 reference, but the fucking 65-year-old woman from Lawrence, Kansas won't, you know?
Yeah. She'll get a Get Up Kids reference.
Yeah, I can try that. There was a Get Up Kids line in our last podcast. I don't remember what it was, but I remember.
Yeah, you told me that.
I mentioned. I bet I mentioned Lawrence is what I did.
Yeah, you.
But anyway,
I'm sure that's what
speaking of towns like that, have you come up with a shitty Pennsylvania town yet?
Well, the town is the town is always Scranton because of The Office. Okay. That's like the go-to. But I don't say Scranton because, one, it's almost hack at this point because everyone says Scranton for a joke. But it also doesn't flow well. So I just say York, because York hits like fuck hits. And even though it's not it's a shitty town, but there's so many shitty towns. But like York is just York.
Yeah, it's
casually dining at the Chili's is York. Yeah, like you hit that shit.
Yeah, that's good.
You see, that's without context, and it's still kind of funny because it just sounds funny. Yeah, dude, Pennsylvania. I have my biggest closer. I officially maybe just a month ago. I finally did I had a couple months into stand-up. I had about 5 minutes that were like my 5 minutes, and they worked, and they impressed people at open mics, and they got me better shows and whatever. And I kind of stopped doing them, but I kept them in my like Word document arsenal of like, oh, just pull these out whenever I need them.
Yeah.
And about a month ago, I looked at them, and compared to the stuff I've been writing over the last 6 months, I was like, oh, I'm ready to be rid of them. Like, they're gone. I don't think I ever went, because if I used to do them, and they'd be the highlight of my set. Now if I do them, they're the low point in my set because everything else has gotten so much better. And it was sad to let it go, but for a while, like the best joke I ever had for my first 9 months, or more than that probably, was a joke about how the Ravens caused Deflategate. If you follow football, it's basically we told the commissioner on Tom Brady. And then the big joke is, Ray Lewis retired last year and we're all snitching now? And then I do a whole Baltimore Ravens snitching the Wire reference, and I throw them all in and kind of remake the Ravens team as if it was like the drug dealers instead of the Ravens. I don't actually say that, but that's kind of the implication. And then I do a big joke bashing the Pittsburgh Steelers and it crushed and all this shit. I'm in Pennsylvania now amongst the Steeler fans. And I was like, even if I still wanted to do that joke,
it's like, hey, Ben Roethlisberger's a racist or rapist or
people,
something like that.
Dude, I've been brought up to stage and go, this guy's from Baltimore. Boo! That's
Really?
how bad it is. Oh, yeah. No, people in Pennsylvania fucking hate the Ravens so much that they hate me before I get on stage. But I actually found, so this is such a rant, this is a real tangent, but like, one of the best things I've learned from stand-up about life, and stand-up for that matter, is that 90% of the way people treat you or expect you to act is based on how you look and how your voice sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like most of it. And maybe that's just from a stand-up perspective because they only see you for this short period of time. But that's like the first impression people give is how you look and how you sound. And you can't really control either of those no matter what your personality is. And I found an opener like a month ago where I just address it. Like, I come out, I'm not going to do the joke here because one, it'll bomb, and two, I'm just going to go here. But it's been working so well, it just addresses that I look like a piece of shit and that it sucks because I'm not a piece of shit. But it doesn't matter because people want me to be a piece of shit for some like sick reason. And it's been like setting up my entire bit. Hey, Rick, just between you and me, and not these cameras and not people listening, things have been going really well. Like, really well. Anyway.
Fuck yeah, man. I knew they would, too.
Thank you.
Got your new room. It's great.
Oh, yeah, this is room. Well, we can do later on some other time. We can do a fake Cribs episode. This is this is my basement. I have 3 bedrooms, a closet, a storage space that's huge, that's like a workshop that I put my cats in, and then another giant storage space, and that's the basement. Like, this is absurd. And I used to own a box in Baltimore, and not even in Baltimore, like south of Baltimore, for about 33 or 25% more than what I'm paying for this thing. Move to a shitty city. It's the best.
Yeah, shit. I mean, I'm here in the suburbs right now thinking like, I still live in Humboldt Park in Chicago, and so many things are a pain in the ass to do that they're not in the suburbs. And like every time I start like getting it a little in my head, it's like, no, stop it, God damn it, no. You're 24, you got to live in a cool city and do cool shit. You don't fucking care about the LL Bean or the fucking Chipotle. Live your fucking life. And
dude, that's true. You are 24. I keep forgetting that. Like, that's the other thing about funny people is like you talk to funny people and you forget. You just forget like the numbers. Like
ain't nothing but a number.
I think when I met Dan Liberto, he was 21, or maybe even young. He might have been just 20.
Well, we're the same age, I think. So.
Oh, you are? Then
Yeah.
Then I'm lying. Straight up lying. Then I met him when he was probably. He must have been 22 to 20, between 22 and 23, probably.
Oh, that's right, because you went to, what was it?
Modest Mouse and Brand New.
Okay, yeah, well done.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a picture on Facebook. You guys both brought your shirt.
I was so good, but that's the thing is like at the time I was like 8, 9 years older than him, and all I wanted, I was like just geeked to get a picture with him. And he was like, I mean, for what he's accomplished at his age, he could literally just be the biggest douche and people would still flock to him. But he was so nice and humble and like borderline just like, it's the same thing with any good comedy writer. They're always like, well, I suck and I'm not funny. I'm a piece of shit. I'm like, that's why you're good. That's kind of fucking great. And it's the inverse too with experience. Like, there's a guy named John Montaigne who's up here in, wait, did I just fucking, no. It's John Montague. What the fuck is wrong with me?
Joe Montana.
Yeah, Joe Montana. This guy, John Montana.
Hell of an arm, that guy.
Met this guy doing stand-up, and he did a fine set. And then at the end, he goes, thank you guys so much. This is my second time doing stand-up. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And I talked to him, and he goes, no, it's my second time doing stand-up.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, oh, shit, you're really good. He's maybe done it 12, 15 times at this point. And natural stage presence, good joke writer. But here's what's like scary, because like he already looks like he's 2 to 5 years in, just in his first month or two. Every time I see him, he gets better on like a fundamental level of like stuff where I'm like, like week 2, I'm like, oh, I learned that at month 6. Then week 3, I learned that at month 7. Week 4, I learned that at month 14.
So his returns are increasing. Yeah. Wow, good for him.
Yeah, it's absurd. And he's finally started talking about, like, I've been talking a lot about jokes, and somebody finally did a joke about something very, I mean, whatever, it's a podcast that a couple hundred people listen to, no one's going to know him. He did a joke about it was dad's in jail. Ooh. And he'd been, like, wanting to do this joke. And we kind of like workshopped it. He actually used one of my lines in it. I was so happy because we were like punching it up like before and all this shit. But like, he has like, that's the thing though. He's a dude who has all the natural chops, writing and performing. And then he had never even brought in anything personal. And he also has interesting personal shit. And it's like at every turn, this may hopefully, if I'm a douchebag, hopefully 4 months in, he hits a wall. But I can see this guy just going and going and going. And he's still just like a student of the game. He never is like, I'm really good. Even though every comic is flocking to him in our scene, it's still like, he's still just not letting anything go to his head. Every week is like, I suck, how do I get better? And it's just so, that mentality is so beautiful among like really funny people.
That is nice. And you're calling it again too. You're like the oracle, bellwether of funny people.
If this were me,
get on the podcast.
If this were me 6 months ago, I would be like, no, fuck you. I can't take a compliment, whatever. I've gotten a little more confidence now that like things are going well on a lot of fronts. I hope I'm not peaked right now. If I've peaked right now, then great, I'll die happy. But at the same time, like I'm hoping this will keep going because it's just kind of been going up for a while. And but like I back when I was like a kid just listening to stand-up comedy, I called so many famous comics, like crazy famous comics, where it was just like I would hear somebody, like I heard Dane Cook when I was about 14 do it at his Comedy Central Presents. So like I've watched every Comedy Central Presents. I was like, oh, this is the next superstar. 4 years later, fucking superstar.
Hell yeah.
I saw Kevin Hart in 2007, maybe 2008, and I was like, this guy is. I don't know why this guy isn't selling out football arenas. Boom, he's selling out football arenas. And it's not like I called everybody. There are plenty of people like Bill Burr and Louis C.K. I watched since I was a kid. And I just didn't. I saw Chewed Up right after it came out. And I was like, oh, this is good. So I totally missed that shit. So I'm not like, whatever. But I have this thing in me where like I've never called somebody to get famous or at least get really good who has not. Like I'm like 100%. I'm batting 1,000 on like called shots, but I miss plenty. But it's like it makes me feel really. I'm glad you called that out because like it makes me feel really good about on these hard times. People who I'm like, oh wow, and even like some of the other writers who have been getting on other sites, like say, really Hannah and Sari were two people who were like I had on the podcast because I was like, I can't believe you're not famous. Like you're so fucking funny. These articles are so good. And then both of them are getting on other sites too, like left and right. And Kyle Earth too. A lot of people are. It's just like, and I mean, now I'm doing that douchey narcissistic thing I do where I try to align myself with other people's success. So sorry about that. But putting my bullshit aside, it's just so cool to see like a group of people who I've admired their work from, like we've all admired their, I mean, whatever, I can't speak for anybody but me, but like admiring their work through an internet writers group, and then to see like, oh shit, this is happening. A year and a half ago, we were all just like shitty punk scrubs, like just like on this Upstarter site, and now all of a sudden it's just like, if you want, and it's not just me. I bet anybody who writes with the Hard Times who walks down the street with a Hard Times shirt will get recognized. And if you say the best article or the most popular article you've written, they'll probably know it.
A lot of people,
that's crazy. Like, hey, did you think this was going to be your in to this subculture? Like, how the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing is like I'm not involved in comedy like remotely. I feel like I was just kind of a guy who was into punk stuff who liked the jokes, and now it's been this really interesting window into that. Like talking to you and like listening to your podcast and being on your podcast is itself just really educational about that subculture, and you know, being friends with all the people in the Hard Times and seeing what they've been doing. And I was in Los Angeles for one of the showcases earlier this summer, Yeah, and so I got to meet Anna and fucking Goodrich and John Michael, and it was really cool. And the show was fucking awesome and funny, and talk to them about that stuff and get a glimpse into that window. I also think comedians are miserable and fucking terrible people, and I have no interest in becoming one. But yeah, it's really great, and it's cool that I get to see it, and I you know, it's been a nice time.
You're so right about both of those, by the way. Miserable, and then you're like, but it's a nice time. It is. I don't understand it. That's like one of my. Like, I've been watching that. I know I read a little bit of the book and then put it away because I don't read. But I've been watching that show. I'm Dying Up Here on Showtime, which a lot of people I know really like. But watching it, I was like, oh, it's like they're tackling comedy from the wrong way. They're saying it's beautiful because it's hard and unappreciated. But that's not why it's beautiful. It's beautiful because it means everything to the people who do it, but it is in and of itself meaningless. It's a weird thing. It's like if you could go up in front of 10,000 people, you could go up in an open mic. For whatever reason, you have the same anxieties and hopes going in at both of them or not.
Yeah.
Plus, even just take something as small as an open mic, you go up and you're anxious. Nobody gives a shit except for you. But to you, it's life and death. And your success is being reborn. And your failure is pure death and misery. But your success doesn't mean anything. And your failure doesn't mean anything outside of yourself. And it's such like a beautiful experience that's like, I like you nailed it right there with like, there's a deep-seated misery, but it's the best time. It's a great time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a calling. Like, and I have very complicated feelings about comedy as an art form, I guess, because so much of me hates it. But there's so much of it that you just have to respect, like because it's so personal and independent. And Mike Birbiglia is one of the guys that when you were talking about calling it, I feel like I remember listening to his first Comedy Central Presents thing and being like, this guy's fucking awesome. I love him. And even today, I think is one of the most insightful people who does comedy. And when he did Sleepwalk with Me, which is a fucking masterwork, and I love it so much. But he said it's not like going to see a play or a musical, because if you go see that and somebody doesn't like it, they can play it off like, well, we didn't like the set or the music. But if they go see comedy and they say that it's like, we don't like you and your personality.
You don't like me. Yep.
And so I think what you said is so it's really rings true because you know, if you get up there and it's like fucking a battle, like you hear about so many comedians starting out and it's like just getting there and sucking is a battle, but nobody, save for maybe the other comedians in the audience, gives even remotely a shit about that, because all they're there to do is laugh and enjoy themselves. So if you can't do that for them automatically, then what the fuck is the point? And that's their perspective. So it really is. There is so much drama inherent to the pursuit that I find so fascinating.
Dude, you going on with Called Shots, I saw Mike Birbiglia in 2004 live, and I thought he sucked. And, I missed that one. I like him now, but so.
Well, maybe he did. A lot of people did suck.
Oh, he was fun. He was fine. He was great. It was my palate that had not been like, my palate hadn't been refined to that. That's what's so funny is like, I remember growing up and listening to so much music, and very young, I got to the point where I was like, okay, even if I don't like something, I can still recognize it for being good. And I can also like something and recognize it's probably not very good, but I like it for my own reasons. Comedy, it turns out, was never that way. It wasn't until I was, close to the age I am now, like probably 27, 28, where I go, oh shit. It's like, my friends would always talk about like, oh, remember that music you listened to in college and you look at it, you're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, no, I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
There's comedy I listened to in college. I was like, ugh, I can't believe I thought that. I brought girls to my dorm to watch this garbage. And I was like, wow, how embarrassing. No wonder everybody left me. The worst taste.
Daniel Tosh is a visionary, man. That guy, he knows what you're talking about.
Hey, Daniel Tosh's Comedy Central Presents, when he was a free association comic, was beautiful. His version of, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there are so many comics, including the bit I was about to reference, where I thought they were the most genius things ever. Like, there are local comics just 2 years ago that I saw, and they would do all these bits about, like, what if you analyze this rap lyric? How silly is it, actually? Where I would go, what a genius! That's so fucking funny! Oh my god! And then now I'm like, oh, if you mention any pop culture, music, lyric, whatever, and you start making fun of breaking it down, like, doesn't actually make a lot of sense. Or that means the opposite of what it means. I'm like, oh, that's the hackiest shit you can do. Like, that's basically a pun at that point. Like, all the things I didn't know were hack until I started going to open mics and seeing every asshole do that joke.
Right.
There were so many like comics who I used to see on TV, and I was like, oh shit, you're a hack. I thought you were the first one to come up with that, which would have made you a genius. But it turns out you were just ripping off every other comic.
Yeah, definitely.
You have any last words? I'll have you back on anytime. I just know that now I'm going to probably have to shrink the file. And
oh, shit. It's been an hour already. You're right. You know, I just have so much dang fun with you, Eric. I don't know what to say.
I know. This is fun. I need to start this thing up again every week and have Hard Times people and other comics on and shit, because this is so much fun. And now I might get blinded because I'm talking to you and I enjoy it. And then the next 3 people I talk to are like dickheads. And then I'm like, oh, that's why I quit. Anyway. Give us any last things before we go.
Well, you know, Hard Times Forever. We are the fucking realest motherfuckers in the streets. It is just the most profound intersection of punk rock and comedy. And
that's probably accurate. Yeah.
The Cubs won the World Series. That's great. And I'm free to say that I hope their plane crashed.
Jesus Christ.
Kidding about that.
I'm trying to find a way to do HNT with my fingers, like a sweet gang sign. Whatever. Anyway,
yeah, that'd be good.
HT, yeah. If I can find a way to do a Hard Times gang sign, I'll be the belle of the ball if we ever have our company picnic.
Oh, you're already the belle of the ball.
Year. But I told my wife, I was like, listen, I don't know how this is a hard sell. I don't know why. Maybe she's planning on leaving me. Who knows? But I was like. Okay, so this like December, there might be like a Hard Times party thing because I know they've referenced it and stuff.
You gotta go.
And I want to go. It's mean a lot to me. It'd be like my own personal vacation. You could come with me if you want. It's gonna be on the West Coast. She's like, no. I was like, all right, but I'd buy a ticket, fly out there. She's like, so you'd fly out there to just go to a party and then come back? And I was like,
a party where people probably won't be drinking too, if you think about it.
I knew it. She was like, and also, you know, you're terrified of flights and you hate flying and you hate travel. And I'm like, yep. It's like, and you hate spending money. I'm like, yep. It's like, but you'll do it. I was like, yep. And she'll go, all right, fine, go. So I hope it happens because I feel like I burned off a lot of goodwill for that shit. Anyway,
it's got it.
Where can we find you on Twitter and other places?
I am at RJ Hometh on Instagram. What is I changed it for a gag. Stick with Twitter then, because who knows what it'll be by the time this actually does hit it big, because
I'm putting this up tomorrow, probably.
Oh shit! All right. Well, no, I mean, because you were saying when it comes back for our very perceptive, whatever. I don't even remember half the shit we said. I was giggling too hard. But at somebody _in_flip_flops. So there you go.
I like it. Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna try and get this up tomorrow. But I got messages from multiple Hard Times editors asking when I would have their articles in by. So I'm gonna do that first, and then hopefully get this up later tomorrow. What?
Shit talking. All right. Hey, thanks a lot, man. It's fucking a pleasure.
So good to have you, man. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good night, dude.